Hey, I'm Casey Wiley, and today I'm going to talk to you about the Kubescrub operator. So the Kubescrub application is a Go application with the React front end, and it basically makes educated guesses about whether or not resources have been orphaned in a Kubernetes cluster. The way the front end communicates with the back end and the way we are going to access the front end is actually through a Kubernetes ingress. So essentially, the operator is going to deploy front end deployment, the back end deployment, the front end and back end services, the service accounts, and the Kubernetes ingress. And it also installs the dependencies for the Nginx ingress. So the operator itself can be configured to poll. It can be configured to poll in a certain interval. It can be configured to watch on specific namespaces for specific resources, and it has a dark theme and a light theme. So currently I have my cluster spun up, and what I'm doing here is I'm actually mapping this node port, which is the node port of the Nginx ingress service, straight to my localhost on 8080. So I can actually reach the Nginx ingress through localhost 8080. So context. So we can see I do have my kind cluster up. I don't have any pods in it or anything. But from here, I'm just going to go ahead and deploy my operator. And this is my operator's dependencies, obviously. And now I'm going to kind of just wait on the Nginx ingress to deployment to be ready. And I'm also waiting on my own operator's deployments to be ready. And notice I do have this job here. And this job is essentially what is deploying the Nginx dependencies. There's actually more background on that in this repository. It talks about that. It's still creating. Looks like one of the conditions are met. And yeah, just waiting on the Nginx controller to be ready. And we're running. So, well, not quite yet. Okay. So now our dependencies have been installed. I was saying I've basically mapped the ingress to localhost 8080 through this node port, and we can actually see that here. So here's this node port. This is the ingress service for the Nginx controller. Now let's go ahead and set our context to the operator's namespace. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to deploy the instance of the operator, which is going to kick off the ingress. Currently, there's no ingresses at all in the cluster, so absolutely none. But now we're going to go ahead and create this instance of the operator. It's called a reaper because it reaps these resources. So we're going to have the dark theme. We're going to be watching for config maps, secrets, and service accounts that may be orphans in the namespaces default, ingress Nginx, kube system. We're going to be polling every 5 seconds. So now it's going to go ahead and spin up those deployments, and we're waiting for the pods to be ready. The pods are ready. Great. So theoretically, now we should be able to go to 8080 localhost and actually see the application. Okay, here we have it. We have the dark theme. We can see we have the config maps, the secrets, and the service accounts, and we're basically have the default ingress Nginx and the kube system namespace. So you can basically change the namespace here on the side, any namespace you want. And you can also kind of segregate by which resource type you're looking at. So I only care about config maps right now and all namespaces. And now I want config maps in the default namespace. And the configuration is actually driven from the backend, and actually, in this case, it's driven through the operator, and the operator configures the backend through the deployment's command arguments. And here are our configurations that you can see. Okay, that's great. So we know it basically works, and let's take a look at the ingress that was created. So we can see the backend service, Kubescrub, and then the front-end service, which is how we're actually accessing the UI. And we can always curl the backend as well. and it's alive. Okay, now we are going to delete this, or we'll look at a deployment, how it was configured. So we can see it's serving on 8080. It has our theme. It's watched the config map secrets. All right, so let's delete our Reaper instance, create a new instance of the Reaper, this time with the light theme, watching only config maps in the default namespace, but still polling. So basically just kind of sleeping this out, making sure these pods are fully deleted, even though we've deleted the instance. So we're back up. We can refresh here. And now, as what we see, we have the light theme. We're watching only config maps in the default namespace. So we can see this actually has worked. We can look at our configuration here. Light, polling yes, 5 seconds, config maps, default namespace. And now we can kind of test our application a little bit. This is not really part of it, but just to check, it is polling. So if we create this new config map greetings, we should actually see it since we're looking at the default namespace. And it comes up here. And this is orphaned because it's not associated with the pod. Now, let's create a config map that's actually used. So we're creating this config map abbreviations from literal. It's NC equals North Carolina. And we're actually mounting that config map to an environmental variable. Go ahead and do this. It's created. And we can see it's correctly picked it up. It says it's actually used, which it is. And remember, ultimately, this application, Kubescrub, just makes predictions, right? It looks at the pod's definition. It looks for the name of the resource and the resource. If both of those two things are there, then it predicts that it's likely not orphaned. It's likely being used by the pod. All right. Thank you all so much. Really appreciate it.